In at number 9, Tracy Morgan. Back in 2007, Vulture magazine did a full story called Tracy Morgan Hates Jimmy Fallon Just As Much As You Do. And in that article, they have quoted Tracy Morgan as he discussed what it was like to work with Fallon on Saturday Night Live. In the quote, Tracy said, "Laughing and all that dumb he used to do, he wouldn't mess with me because I didn't f***ing play that shit. That's taking all the attention off of everybody else and putting it on you. Like, oh, look at me, I'm the cute one. I told him not to do that in my sketches, so he never did." Some people may have viewed Jimmy's laughter as a sign of nervousness, or perhaps he thought the sketch was just so funny that he couldn't keep a straight face. However, with this direct quote from someone who worked alongside him, it's become clear that the laughter is more for attention than anything else. I mean, we can't fault him for wanting more attention on a show that is widely known to be super competitive within their own ranks. The stories about Saturday Night Live cast members backstabbing each other to get their sketches on air is endless. And it turns out Tracy Morgan wasn't about to have Jimmy steal any of his spotlight. In at number 8, Shawn Mendes. So far, singer Shawn Mendes has had 2 appearances on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and we're not sure why. Nothing against Shawn, but that first appearance was very awkward. Shawn first appeared on the show back in 2016 and came on to help Jimmy with singing songs on the spot. Unfortunately for Shawn, Jimmy gave him a late cue to start singing, which made Mendes look extremely unprofessional and completely out of his element. Even though that wasn't the reality, it certainly came off that way. In at number 7, Banks. How excited would you be if you were a musician and then suddenly you heard your song being played on a late night talk show? Sounds like a dream come true, right? Well, for the South Sudanese born rapper named Banks, it was his biggest nightmare. Banks became well known, especially in Australia, for his viral hits such as Take You to the Movies and Meet Me on Facebook. However, it was his song Take You to the Movies that received a rather unflattering review from one Jimmy Fallon. In a segment called Do Not Play, Fallon ridiculed Banks for the song and even mocked his performance by mimicking him. In response to this, Jimmy made a new enemy in Australia, and Banks put out a Jimmy Fallon diss track called Do Not Watch. In at number 6, Don Rickles. Comedian Don Rickles was an absolute legend, famous for being able to humiliate an entire room of people just by himself. Doesn't sound that impressive, but writing good roast jokes can be very difficult, and this man was able to think of them on the spot and deliver it with ease. This moment he has with Jimmy Fallon can be very telling though, as Don Rickles showers Jimmy with compliments before arriving at the conclusion that he has never liked the late night host. Rickles has been appearing on The Tonight Show since Fallon was in diapers, so the moment that he was on the show, he took complete control and warned us that Fallon carrying on the show may have been a bad idea. He said he was great at impressions, but then mocked the size of the audience, and this was pre-COVID. He also mentioned that Jimmy should enjoy the show while he has it because it's probably not gonna last. In at number 5, Ricky Gervais. Comedian Ricky Gervais has never been one to conceal his true thoughts about someone, and this has become made expressly clear when he hosted the Golden Globes. In his opening monologue, he tore into nearly every massive celebrity in attendance. Even after all of the backlash that he received, he was still welcomed as a guest on The Tonight Show. Although as soon as Ricky sat down, he began to argue with Jimmy over comments regarding his appearance. Ricky Gervais then goes into a 4.5-minute rant about everything wrong with what Jimmy just said. It just gets so heated that Jimmy even turns to his production team for help after Ricky swears live on air. In at number 4, Samantha Bee. Samantha Bee is a comedian and political commentator that used her show called Full Frontal with Samantha Bee to further discuss her opinions and views on the world. So when Jimmy had on President Donald Trump, it came to no surprise that Samantha Bee was going to have some strongly worded opinions. When Jimmy had Trump on his show, he created one of the most memorable and perhaps controversial moments in late night history. With the president sitting beside the desk, he leaned over and ruffled his hair. This was highly criticized by many other late night hosts as being too jovial. Samantha's issue with this interview conducted by Fallon was that it should have never even happened. In at number 3, Horatio Sanz. It's no question that being a celebrity or being in the Hollywood spotlight definitely comes with a lot of pressure. Many people eventually succumb to some type of addiction issue as a way to cope with this. Horatio, who worked with Fallon back in the day on Saturday Night Live, slipped up during an interview with Vulture magazine. Because the pair had worked together for many years, they grew to become pretty close friends. Although Horatio admitted that every person who worked on SNL had some kind of illegal substance addiction or drinking problem. He continued by saying that comedians on the show would often find themselves needing to blow off steam, and it wasn't long before people started connecting the dots between that statement and Jimmy Fallon. It had been long rumored that Jimmy may have had a drinking problem as well, but the network, both for SNL and The Tonight Show, did their very best to perfect his image. This also makes a previous story about Fallon getting into a bar fight make a lot more sense. Horatio continued to talk about past alleged fights, including one where Jimmy supposedly poured a drink into someone's hat. Horatio claims that when the guy tried to confront Jimmy Fallon, he reportedly ended up on the floor. In at number 2, Roger Waters. For those of you who don't know, Roger Waters along with musician Syd Barrett are the founding members of the legendary rock band called Pink Floyd. The pair played together for many years before Syd eventually left the band. Although his diagnosis was never made official, many speculated that Syd Barrett could have been suffering from schizophrenia. In addition to his mental illness going unchecked, he was was also experimenting heavily with psychedelics, which certainly impacted the music that Pink Floyd had created. However, Sid's brain chemistry did not bode well with mixing these drugs with his already distraught state of mind. When discussing this on The Tonight Show, you can visibly see Roger begin to get uncomfortable. You can tell that even this long after Sid's passing, it never gets easier for him to talk about. Now, the part where he inadvertently warns us about Jimmy Fallon is how Jimmy responds to this emotion. Instead of matching his energy and being more gentle with the conversation, Jimmy catapults himself out of the uncomfortable zone and immediately begins to try and crack jokes, which lands us at this awkward departure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't wait to see you, and I'll be at every show screaming. I'll be waving at you, and you'll be ignoring me. But anyways.
Last but certainly not least, our number one spot, John Oliver. Many late night hosts have learned over the years that they're not really competition, but rather colleagues working in a similar field. This, however, does not mean that they are beyond criticizing the others' interviewing techniques. John Oliver, for example, hosts his own show called Last Week Tonight that has grown to become a big success in its own right. Even though John has his own show, he did appear as a guest on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. However, things got off to a very awkward start. After Jimmy remarked at his love for the name of John's show, John Oliver thought that his comment was weak, pun intended maybe, but the worst part was that it did not get better from here. Oliver outright said that this strange out of nowhere compliment comes as a result of Jimmy Fallon's awful interviewing skills.
Number 10. Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has always divided TV audiences, but he gained new notoriety after taking on the Duchess of Sussex. The host of Good Morning Britain abruptly left the show from broadcaster ITV after questioning whether Meghan Markle was being truthful when she told Oprah Winfrey that she had dark thoughts of self-harm before stepping back from her duties as a member of the royal family. Morgan's comments sparked a backlash and triggered an investigation by Ofcom, the country's media regulator, which received a record 57,100 complaints about his remarks. Despite leaving the show just drenched in shame, he did try to keep his career going by moving to another news source, only that one's more like one of those online news sources, you know the ones I'm talking about. Number 9. Chris Harrison. Chris was a longtime host of the popular reality show The Bachelor and its female counterpart The Bachelorette. Chris was forced to permanently exit the show after coming under fire earlier this year for defending a contestant's past racist behavior. Harrison, who has hosted the popular franchise for almost 20 years, stepped aside from his role in February after he defended former Bachelor contestant Rachel Kirkconnell, who was shown in photos attending an antebellum plantation-themed fraternity formal in 2018. Harrison made the comments defending Kirkconnell during an extra interview with former Bachelorette Rachel Lindsay. In his interview with Lindsay, Harrison expressed sympathy for Kirkconnell and implied that the criticism directed against her was unfair because the photos were from the past. When Lindsay said it was not a good look that Kirkconnell attended a party celebrating the antebellum South, a time period when slavery was still present, Harrison said, "Well, Rachel, is it a good look in 2018 or is it not a good look in 2021? Because there's a big difference." Hey Chris, yeah, it's not a good look ever. He later admitted he made a mistake and that he was seeking guidance from a race educator and strategist, which I'm not really sure what that person does. Alright, here's how we're not gonna be racist today. Number 8. Bill Maher. Bill has always been a man of controversy, literally hosting a show called Politically Incorrect for years before being cancelled in the early 2000s. He's since gone on to host his own show again called Real Time with Bill Maher, a show that may finally be getting the cancellation treatment thanks to Bill just being an absolute menace to society. Bill has shared a few controversial opinions on his talk show, but he's also spouted some pretty rough language saying words that nobody should ever say, especially the N-word, which he just casually threw around during a live exchange with the Senator of Nebraska, Ben Sasse, in 2017. He was immediately called out by millions of people begging for the cancellation of his show on HBO, but instead of canceling the show, HBO released a statement claiming that his language was inexcusable and tasteless, and then they just removed the word from the edited version. While his career as a talk show host hasn't really suffered, and there's plenty of terrible people to interview, his career as a comedian has gone nowhere but down the drain. Number 7. Joe Rogan. Joe was once the host of one of the most intense reality game shows of all time, Fear Factor. Right? Just mentioning that name makes me feel like I've got cockroaches crawling all around me. Seriously, whose idea was that? Eventually, Joe moved on from the world of live game shows and moved to live gladiator fights, aka UFC. As a sports commentator, Joe has been adored by fans, becoming a staple in the world of ultimate fighting. However, he also decided it would be an epic idea to start a podcast podcast and invite everyone and anyone under the sun, including several fake doctors and media men, to spread lies to the world while fueling Joe's tiny ego. To make everything worse, Joe decided that since it was his show, he could say whatever he wanted, defending the situations surrounding the show's so-called misinformation. He is also one of those people who just casually likes to throw around the N-word when he feels like it's necessary. After saying too much on several episodes, Joe's career has been cemented as podcast host from now on. Like, if this man ever tries to rise, he's gonna fall hard into a pit of animal entrails. Seriously, why was Fear Factor a thing? Number 6, Sharon Osbourne. 2 years ago on the popular talk show The Talk, host Cheryl Underwood and Sharon Osbourne began to discuss the topic of racism amongst the recent firing of Sharon's personal friend Piers Morgan, also on this list, from Good Morning Britain over all the comments he made about the Duchess of Sussex. Sharon went off and began aggressively defending her friend, asking Cheryl what Piers said specifically that was racist. She then went on to say that she was being put into an electric chair, and due to her connection to Piers that she herself must also be racist. She went on to clarify that she did not support his comments per se, but that she did support his right to free speech. But like, he used that free speech to say messed up stuff, so maybe don't support him. She then asked Cheryl over and over again how she herself could be so racist. What has she done? What has she said? Well, Cheryl then signed off for a commercial break before Sharon let out some pretty choice expletives. When they returned, the tension almost seemed worse and the conversation continued to escalate. Eventually, Underwood was able to get her point across and calm Sharon down. However, the damage was done and the internet called for her immediate removal from the show. Number 5, James Corden. In one of the show's more popular bits, The Late Late Show had the Late Late lie detector. Corden asks his guests to hook up to a lie detector test and answer a series of questions on the air. During one segment of this bit, in which guest Kris Jenner was hooked up to the line, she was asked about her involvement in producing a certain tape with Kim. You know what I'm talking about. She was quick to roll her eyes and shake her head and say, "Oh no, no, no." And then the expert said, "True. Case closed." Nope, not even close, because the next day, Kim Kardashian's ex-boyfriend Ray J blasted the show, calling the segment fake and claiming that the man giving the test, John, was underqualified. Going on to call the network sad for allowing this segment to be aired and threatening to sue Corden and the show itself. A little digging was done and it turned out that there was some truth to these claims, as John's LinkedIn profile revealed that he had attended an unspecified number of lie detector academies, which sounds super made up. It also said that he had a bachelor in law, but that he didn't actually really finish the course. Whether it was this moment or one of the many missteps in James's show's history, the entire thing got canceled and James is a liar stuck looking for work. Number 4, Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen had one of the most successful daytime talk shows of all time until 2020. Her show became overwhelmed with accusations of toxic work environment from former employees. They were claiming that Ellen's happy exterior was nothing more than a fake facade put in place to keep the audience on her team. A small bit of proof came when she accused 50 Shades of Grey actress Dakota Johnson of not inviting her to a birthday party a few months prior. Dakota reminded her that she had in fact sent an invitation but received a notice from producers that she did not want to attend. Fans began questioning this awkward moment and the cracks in her appearance started getting bigger and bigger. Eventually, an article was released containing testimonies from several former employees, and there were just too many stories for this thing to be made up. Ellen canceled herself by denying every single thing that she was being accused of, and instead of acknowledging her faults and missteps as a boss, she didn't respond as you may think with like a public apology though. Instead, she was forced to cancel both herself and her show amid the controversy and has since been on a hiatus. Number 3, Howard Stern. Stern may have just been one of the best talk show guests in the 1990s and the early 2000s. While he's still stellar when he actually allows someone to interview him, he particularly rocked it when he was at his most outrageous. This is because he'd come on and just take over. For instance, his favorite guy was Jay Leno. Today we're going to talk about one instance specifically on the Jay Leno show. Jay sat back as one of his guests attacked Howard's longtime co-host Robin Quivers during a segment on his show for her allegiance with the shock jock. Not only did this anger Robin, but Howard was irritated. Howard has accused Jay Leno of stealing his bits from his radio show, as well as a host of other problems. In fact, he has publicly called Jay a crook numerous times, even on his own talk show, which is kind of what landed him on this list, and his hatred for such a universally loved man most certainly made an impact on his status as a radio celebrity. He still has a podcast to this day, but thanks to him sitting behind the microphone all the time, the world just kinda moved on. Number 2. Charlie Sheen. Charlie rose to fame in the early 80s after starring in a slew of cult classic flicks like Red Dawn, The Boys Next Door, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off in a brief but memorable cameo. He fell into the mainstream in 2003 when he began playing the character Charlie Harper in the hit sitcom 2.5 Men. It was so good that even just mentioning it got that theme song stuck in your head. Anyway, sorry. However, in 2009 he was arrested for attempting to harm his wife Brooke Mueller on several occasions, and at the time of the arrest both parties had been indulging in adult beverages, with Sheen becoming enraged beyond control. Following this, a restraining order was placed prohibiting Sheen from being within 100 feet of both Brooke and their kids. Despite all the controversy, Charlie was later seen doing press for an upcoming movie on the Today Show when the interviewer asked Charlie what was behind his sudden behavior, claiming that he was being perceived as an angry and erratic man. Sheen responded with, no, it's my passion, before he launched into a no snow-fueled tirade. He claimed his brain functioned within a separate realm to ours. Charlie's interview was defensive to say the least, with his energy just being weird and aggressive the entire time. Ever since then, Charlie has maintained a strange air of arrogancy towards himself because he still thinks he's the king of TV and like winning, when in reality this is probably the first time you've heard about him in a while. And at number 1, Tom Cruise. Now, it's one thing to be asking people to join your church all the time, whatever, it's not a big deal, but Tom's behavior as a member of society has been rough to say the least. Following the announcement that he was engaged to Katie Holmes in the early 2000s, Tom appeared on an episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show that has gone down in history as one of the most chaotic TV interviews of all time. From the moment he walks on stage, he has this strange energy. He's oddly excited, like he just got told the best news in his entire life. He throws his arms up in the air, he rubs Oprah's shoulder like she's a lamp and he's trying to summon a genie. Tom jumped up on her couch, grabbed her hands over and over again. She couldn't even get her questions out that she had for him because he was just being so chaotic. Eventually, Oprah was like, whatever, just bring Katie out. And then the cameras followed Tom as he ran around the studio all Paranormal Activity style. The moment cemented Tom as a man with many hidden personalities. And while it hasn't really affected his work as an actor, ever since that day, whenever he is brought in for press or any kind of interviews, all entrances and exits must be locked at all times.
Starting off our list today, in the number 10 spot, we have Pete Davidson. Saturday Night Live star Pete Davidson made his Tonight Show debut in 2018 to chat about his short-lived engagement to his then fiancée, Ariana Grande. The interview started off easy enough though, with the comedian gushing about the relationship. However, when Fallon suggested that the late night show itself would be a perfect place for the Hollywood duo to get married, Davidson clapped back by saying, "Why do people care? It's very weird. It's weird cause like the president's trying to pardon himself," and he then went on to make a reference about Donald Trump's affair with Stormy Daniels. The audience responded to the remark with some scattered laughter, while Jimmy himself laughed it off but looked a little bit uncomfortable. Davidson then went on to throw a couple more profanities throughout the interview. Finally, Jimmy told Pete that he couldn't say those words on live television, and then he jokingly told the comedian he was fired from the show. Pete then went on to tell Jimmy that he didn't care and he would just go on the Seth Meyers show, before stating that he had Seth's number but not Jimmy's. Jimmy then quickly retorted by saying, "And you're never going to get it either." The entire exchange was then met with shocking howls from the studio crowd. Quickly, Pete and Fallon's awkwardness together made for such a comedic gold moment that NBC appeared to excuse the former verbal hiccups and gave him the green light to return to the show. Number 9, Lea Michele. When Jimmy Fallon welcomed former Glee star Lea Michele onto The Tonight Show back in January to discuss her Funny Girl Broadway debut, Michele wouldn't be the only big-name star on the show that evening, as The Whale and Stranger Things star Sadie Sink also joined Jimmy on the sofa for a chat. But when the primetime talk show invited the two to take part in a game of charades, some eagle-eyed fans claimed to spot a rather awkward moment after they pointed out that Lea pushed Sink out of her way. The moment then came after Fallon welcomed the two to come on from behind the scenes, and she awkwardly stood in front of Sadie before Sadie moved out of the way so Lea could slide into her spot. Lea also cut Sadie off when she was making her way to the sofa. The outcome of the episode would then have fans talking and smashing Lea on various social media platforms as they labeled her to be an actress that was a rude, mean girl. Number 8, Cardi B. Cardi B is just as well known for her over-the-top demeanor and trademark catchphrases as she is for her catchy beats and overall lyrical flow. So you think that before Jimmy brought her on the show, he would have done some research on what he should have expected when bringing the Bronx native onto his show in 2017. Equipped with all her signature sounds and quick-witted jokes, the Bodak rapper was indeed in full Cardi B mode. The problem It looked like Jimmy didn't quite know how to handle her unique energy, which made for an awkward interview that left some fans cringing. At the start of the segment, the artist had already begun with her strange noises, which Jimmy seemingly attempted to ignore at first, after he asked Cardi B about her NYC upbringing, to which she responded by saying her signature sound, leaving Jimmy to simply just sit there in silence before taking a sip of water. As the interview went on, he appeared to fall more and more into this hilarious groove with the rapper, but the whole thing just came off as a pretty uncomfortable moment, as Twitter users even put it. So entertaining for Cardi, but really awkward for Jimmy. Number 7, Shawn Mendes. Singer and Canadian Shawn Mendes had not one but two pretty uncomfortable appearances on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, with the hitmaker who first went on the show in 2016 to help the host with his hashtag fall song segment, but just as Mendes was finishing the second song, he would call Fallon out for giving him a late cue for beginning his singing, before making a number of jokes in order to point out the comedian's age. While the audience went on to laugh at the first joke, it would quickly stop as Shawn went on to throw similar verbal blows Jimmy's way, like when he told the host that he sounded like his grandfather. The joke was then met with awkward cricket sounds from both the audience and Jimmy, and it totally gave off this like really cringy vibe. Somehow Shawn was able to return to the show 2 years later, and he would go on to open up about his performance with Justin Timberlake at the 2018 iHeart Music Festival. Jimmy then heckled his guests over who Justin might just like more as the banter continued on throughout the interview. Things progressively then got a little bit more awkward as Jimmy's final move to squash the playful beef was to share his infamous over-the-top laugh. Number 6, Donald Trump. Jimmy Fallon's interview in 2016 with Donald Trump would leave countless Americans disappointed and enraged. With the Tonight Show host keeping things pretty lighthearted, he did his best to avoid pushing any political buttons. However, he did finish off his interview with a notorious piece of resistance after he playfully messed up Donald's wig, with the move bringing Donald on the show being widely criticized, eventually costing Fallon 21% of his audience by the following year, as fans were furious with the host, to point out he would later admit in the Hollywood Reporter Awards Chatter podcast that days following the incident, it was a downtime for him and he was very sorry as he didn't want to make anyone angry. Donald then came out to accuse the host of just whimpering before claiming that Jimmy just needs to be a man already. By 2019, The Tonight Show would then bounce back with top ratings, but it seemed like for Fallon's image, it still remained somewhat tainted. Number 5, Martin Short. Comedian legends Steve Martin and Martin Short aren't just longtime showbiz besties, but they are also absolutely hilarious together, ever since they starred in the 1986 film Three Amigos. These two have been known for their fabulous banter. However, when they appeared together on The Tonight Show in 2019, they used the opportunity to rip into the host Jimmy Fallon, turning the interview in somewhat more of a Comedy Central roast than a casual late-night appearance with rapid-fire jokes aimed at the talk show host. Alleged fakeness, with Martin beginning the show by saying this is the greatest show on television because there is no host in the late night that pretends to care the way you do. I mean, no one captures phoniness the way you do, it's a gift. He would then take things a little too far when he went on to say that it was really rare that Jimmy's teeth looked so good even though he was taking narcotics. Short then went on to declare, "You prove that all handsome white men can make it in show business." Near the end of the roast, Jimmy just looked more noticeably quieter than he usually does, as he was trying to recover from all the hurtful things that were said so he can move along with the interview. Number 4, Louis C.K. Just once before 5 women accused him of making unwanted advancements was exposed by the New York Times in November of 2017. Comedian Louis C.K. was making his rounds on the talk show circuit to promote his Netflix stand-up special. He and Jimmy Fallon seemingly got along just fine at the top of his appearance on The Tonight Show that March. Well, that is until the host appeared to forget how to use his brain when Louis began the interview by telling Jimmy how much he loves to take naps. Midway through his rave about activity, Jimmy would ask him, "You like it better than sleep?" which it all took to leave Louis looking utterly perplexed. And then he went on to grace us all with the most epic side-eye before joking, "You really? That's stupid. You just said that. That was a dumb thing to say." That was such a dumb thing to say. The comedian then went on to rip into Jimmy further when he offered multiple analogies showcasing just why he felt like the question was so absurd. For his part, the former SNL star tried to save the entire situation through his rationality before Lewis finally dropped the banter with a chuckle, asking him if he could just get past this part. Number 3. Ricky Jarvis. Notorious for his style of self-deprecating cringe humor, Ricky Jarvis admittedly has no filter. In a 2019 interview with the New York Times Magazine, the comedian explained that the notion of himself taking things a little too far is one of the things he does for comedy, laughing at the wrong thing because you know what's right, with its self-professed view of what's right and wrong, if that makes sense of what he said. Particularly through the lens of comedy, it should come to no surprise that the British entertainer immediately latched on to Fallon's fake compliments during his 2017 appearance on the late night show. After the host began telling Ricky that he looked great, which was enough to send his guests into a long-winded rant about his appearance when he said, "I look great, is that sarcasm? You see, this is the thing with you. The talk show. Oh, you look great. Even though, look at me, of course I don't look great," the creator of the British version of The Office then hushed his hilarious 4.5-minute charade about weight gain with a string of profanity, causing Fallon to look away from the camera and playfully cut his gut off so he could attempt to continue on with the interview. Number 2. Blake Shelton. It's hard to imagine annoying Blake Shelton as he's a laid-back country singer. However, when he nearly lost his cool when he appeared on The Tonight Show in 2017, he kinda lost respect from a lot of his fans, with Jimmy kicking things off by heckling Blake over his cover for his 11th studio album, Texoma Shore. With what began as a light-hearted humor conversation, it would turn Blake to have a furious moment. With Jimmy asking Blake what he was thinking and about the memories he was in, Blake would turn sour and he would try to keep things friendly, as the audience laughed as he would tell Jimmy he was wishing he was actually there instead of on his show. With the comedian not noticing the slight hint that Blake was trying to urge the comedian to move on, Jimmy began to bring up Blake's upbringing by imitating Southern accents and stereotypes. The voice judge looked semi-annoyed as the so-called joke went on and he refused to laugh at Fallon's sketch. However, after a couple more minutes of banter, Blake appeared to have enough and finally snapped at Fallon by saying, "Will you interview me for God's sake?" When Jimmy went on to finally interview the country singer, he would then seemingly mutter, "Thank God." It just seems like Blake isn't the type of person who has a good sense of humor, and Jimmy should have known better than to bring him on the show since he is the king of humor. Number 1. John Oliver. While he's famously engaging and animated with his guests, Jimmy Fallon appeared to tone things down a bit when he sat down for an interview with late-night rival John Oliver in 2018. When Jimmy asked John about his role as Zazu in the live-action remake of The Lion King, Oliver would say, "I'm a movie star. You respect me, Jimmy. I'm a movie star now, and some things are about to change around here." The British comedian then went on to discuss his experience singing the Disney classic, "I Just Can't Wait to Be King." Oliver then went on to brush off the production's note that he sang great and would become an ironic remark, especially considering Fallon's next move. When Jimmy turned his attention to Oliver's small role in his award-winning HBO show, Jimmy would start things off by saying, "The best title of any show ever." Without skipping a beat, John then responded by giving him a blank expression, saying, "The best title, wow, that sounds like fanning me with fake praise. Jimmy, I really love the title, it goes downhill once it's finished." But it seems like even if the two were not taking things seriously, that John was just a little too full of himself.
Starting us off at number 10, we have the unnecessary segment. So back in 2013, Jimmy went under fire for allowing a segment between himself and a group of children to air. In this skit, he was interviewing them questions they had no idea about, considering they're about 5 or 6 years old. He told them that America was in debt to China and owes them about $1.3 trillion, to which he asked what they think America should do in order to pay them back. One kid suggested mass destruction and a full which is wild because the kid was very young. Why does he know so much about violent things? Jimmy responded with, "Okay, that's an interesting idea." He then pushed the joke further, asking the rest of the children if Chinese people should live, most of them saying yes except for the one kid who brought up the idea in the first place. After ending the segment comparing it to the Lord of the Flies book, this was obviously not received well by the immediate public. Jimmy and the ABC network ended up issuing a public apology, condemning their part part in the segment's execution and had it removed from all platforms, never to be rewatched from the public. At number 9, we have the inappropriate comments. Back in 2009, an interview he had with Megan Fox resurfaced. In it, she was retelling the time she was an extra on Michael Bay's film Bad Boys 2. She was only 15 at the time and was dressed in a bikini and 6-inch heels, which she had no business wearing around anyone, especially at her young age. The conversation was clearly going in a way that reflects how society and Hollywood preys on young girls for their sick need. Megan was trying to out Michael's inappropriate tendencies, but Jimmy instead defends it, saying, "That's really a microcosm of how all our minds work. But some of us have the decency to repress those thoughts and pretend that they don't exist." Yeah, maybe it was funny at the time when being mindful and not a weirdo was considered unfunny, but in today's age, this proved to be detrimental for Jimmy's career. Next up on the list, we have the Andy Dick and Ivanka Trump interview. It's always the interviews from the 2000s that tend to be the worst ones. In 2007, Jimmy had Andy and Ivanka on the show. As comedians, you're supposed to be funny, but what part of putting your hands on a woman on national live television is funny? Let's just throw being woke and progressive and all that stuff out the window for a second. That type of action is worthy of you getting thrown out or jailed. As Ivanka's answering one of Jimmy's questions, or trying to, she can tell Andy is staring at her the whole time, and he finds every opportunity he can to lay his hands on her. He asked if she puts glitter on her legs and proceeded to start rubbing her leg. Jimmy intervened while trying to maintain the lightness of the show, but he didn't stop. He ended up getting dragged out of the show by Jimmy alongside 2 other security staff. Now, regardless where you stand politically, he had no business touching someone without their consent. When asked about his non-consensual touching for an unrelated matter, he denied it and said it was just him being funny. But it was only last year when he was convicted for battery and sentenced to 90 days in jail as a newly registered offender. I guess it's not funny anymore, huh? At number 7, we have Quinta Brunson's acceptance speech. After winning an Emmy for the Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series award, Quinta's moment was basically ruined when Jimmy, who presented the award, decided to perform his long-time bit with Will Arnett. He proceeded to lie on the stage throughout the duration of her acceptance speech. She didn't let this ruin it entirely, as she tried to play along and made him hold her phone while she spoke. She handled it with grace, but people were still offended on her behalf, especially her co-star Cheryl Lee Ralph, who called the act disrespectful. Later, she appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he was able to apologize to her publicly. She was also able to give her acceptance speech in full, which was honestly the least he could do for her. Fortunately for him, all was forgiven. Next up at number 6 is the Kanye West interview. Kanye is known for his radical political statements and beliefs, and not in a good way. In 2018, he appeared on Jimmy's show and was asked about his stance with Donald Trump, as he was often seen as an avid Trump supporter. Him admitting to it face-to-face was a way to stir the pot, and having it recorded was a plus. But this caught the rapper off guard, and he kind of just tilted his head and went silent. It was too short of an awkward moment. You might miss it because Jimmy quickly cut to commercial. I personally think it would have been funnier had he just let Kanye sit in that awkward silence a bit more. After his segment was aired, Kanye went on Twitter to clarify what happened. He said he wasn't necessarily stumped by such a question, but rather he just wasn't given an opportunity to actually answer the question. At number 5, we have the Oscars jokes. Jimmy hosted the 2017 Oscars, and many people were not happy with the jokes he made. When actor Mahershala Ali won an Oscar for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Jimmy thought it would be a good idea to poke fun at his name. While the actor was probably internally celebrating his award, as well as his newborn daughter at the time, Jimmy said that with a name like his, he can't name his daughter just Amy. One Twitter user expressed their disgust for the joke, saying, "You received the greatest honor of your career, and immediately after a white man reminds you that you are different." The talk show host also had a prank segment where he tricked a bus full of tourists to attend the Oscars. He found another opportunity to make fun of ethnic names when he asked one Asian woman, for her name, to which she said it was Yulri. Then when he asked for her husband's name, which was Patrick, Jimmy said, "See, that's a name." Another Twitter user made fun of Jimmy, saying, "Kimmel is so baffled by non-Anglo names like Mahershala and Yulri," which earned a handful of likes in agreement. At number 4, we have Tyler Perry, who exposed Jimmy. Sometime early last year, the filmmaker made a guest appearance on the talk show and had a moment similar to that one awkward interview exchange between Dakota Johnson and Ellen. Jimmy brought up the brand new studio Tyler had opened, which brought up a party invitation Jimmy had ignored. There was a big party celebrating the studio's opening, and Tyler invited Jimmy only for him not to show up. Jimmy tried to use the lockdown as an excuse, but this party was way before the world shut down. He then came up with another excuse, trying to appear humble, and said that he assumed the invitation was for Jimmy Fallon. But Tyler was quick to point out the invitation had said Jimmy Kimmel and included a whole video requesting his attendance. And to make things worse, Jimmy had actually acknowledged the invite and promised to send a gift at least, but there was no gift. While it was a conversation in mostly good faith, Jimmy wasn't making himself look any better. Next up, we have the interview with Roseanne Barr. She had appeared on the talk show to help promote the reboot of Roseanne, a hit family sitcom from the 80s. But the conversation took a turn and became all about politics, which was not what the audience was looking forward to. They discussed her habit of excessive tweeting that made no sense, her political views, and the time she ran for president in 2012. While the interview got laughter and applause, I wouldn't be surprised if most of it was because they kinda had to. Viewers were unhappy with the interview as they felt like the vibe was ruined. They were waiting to hear more about the Roseanne reboot and not about her reaction to Trump's presidential win. One user said, Kimmel insisted on talking about politics when Carr was clearly trying to behave and promote her show. That was cringe-worthy regardless of your political stance. The show in question ended up getting cancelled after one season following her xenophobic tweets. At number 2, we have the time he played back Joaquin Phoenix's outtake. So Jimmy and Joaquin were discussing the actor's infamous role as the Joker when Jimmy played an outtake for the audience. Things were very intense, as you can tell by Joaquin's demeanor. The actor was clearly irritated and fed up, if his swearing at the staff was anything to go by. He was seen cussing out at Larry, whom he revealed was one of the movie's cinematographers, for calling him Cher, implying that Joaquin was being a total diva on set. Once the clip finished, the actor was clearly caught off guard and embarrassed. He apologized to the audience for witnessing him in that moment, but the fans applauded him. Fans were not happy though that Jimmy had even unveiled this to the public to begin with, as they thought he was trying to get the public to view Joaquin differently. And finally, at number 1, we have the I told my kids I ate all their Halloween candy segment. Now, I'm sure you've seen at least one of these types of videos floating around the internet, and honestly, they're funny, you can't even lie. But some users don't think so, claiming that the video challenge, aimed for a good laugh, is at the cost of children's trauma, which I don't think it's that serious, especially because most of the videos, if not all, have the parent come clean and show that they didn't actually eat all of their Halloween candy. Even Jimmy tried to end things and skip the tradition altogether in 2020, but parents continued on anyways. It's a harmless joke, really, so may the tradition live on.
Coming in at 10, Randy Quaid. Randy Quaid has had a truly bizarre life that deserves to be turned into a movie. In September 2009, Academy Award nominee Quaid and his wife Evie were arrested for not paying a $10,000 hotel bill. Following the incident, they were arrested again for squatting in a home they used to own. So what did they do? They skipped town and headed north to Canada. However, if you think that's weird, it got much weirder. Everyone assumed Quaid fled from the law, but he claimed they fled to avoid the Hollywood-style Whackers, a secret organization that took celebrities out or manufactured scandals to discredit them. In an interview with the Vancouver Press, Quaid talked about the mysteries behind the organization, claiming that Heath Ledger, David Carradine, and Chris Penn were the group's latest victims. Since then, Quaid was arrested once again and released back in 2015. In February of 2017, Quaid posted a video on Twitter which showed him displaying a full mountain man beard, pretending to get it on with his wife while she was wearing a Rupert Murdoch mask. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on here. Coming in at 9, Wesley Snipes. Snipes was a major player back in the day, starring in films like White Men Can't Jump, Julie Newmar, and of course the Blade trilogy. Things were looking pretty good for Snipes until he failed to pay his taxes. Yeah, that's a big no-no. Usually if you're a Hollywood icon, you pay back your taxes plus some fines. However, not Snipes. No. His tax offenses were so bad that he went to jail, serving a year in the slammer for each year he failed to pay. which was 3. On top of that, he had to pay back $17 million in taxes and penalties, which completely put a stop on his thriving career. Lesson number 1, pay your taxes, people. Coming in at 8, Paul Reubens. We all remember the bow-tied man-child Pee Wee Herman, right? The one that coined the phrase, I know you are, but what am I? I think anyway, don't quote me on that. Regardless, Paul Reubens became a fan favorite back in the 80s and into the 90s. However, this all changed drastically for him overnight when he was arrested in Florida for indecent exposure at an adult movie theater, with sheriffs claiming they spotted him masturbating during the film. The actor was 38 at the time and pleaded no contest, agreeing to take part in an anti-drug campaign to avoid trial. He attempted to come back, but that also blew up in his face when more charges were brought against him, this time related to child pornography. Officers seized thousands of items, including a Rob Lowe sex tape that was in his collection. It took a decade before he was welcomed back into the public eye, which he did surprisingly well, starring in the Netflix film Pee-wee's Big Holiday. What do you guys think? Do you think he deserved a second chance? I don't. Coming in at 7, Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser is a name most of us forgot about, and seemingly so did Hollywood. You won't find this actor appearing in much of anything anymore, at least nothing of merit. Fraser shot to fame when he appeared as Rick O'Connell in the Mummy trilogy, a series which came to define him as an actor. He struck gold again in 2008 when he landed the leading role in the 3D fantasy Journey to the Center of the Earth, a worldwide box office success that made $242 million. However, things quickly went downhill for the actor when he made the very poor decision to turn down the role in the sequel, which ultimately went to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, with the film going on to surpass the original, raking in $335 million. His poor decision seemed to draw the end of his career. I'm sure he's having major regrets these days. Coming in at 6, Jennifer Grey. Jennifer Grey was an 80s darling, starring in films like Dirty Dancing and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. However, she quickly vanished from the spotlight and failed to book any major roles following her success. Why was this? Well, if you didn't know, Grey was known for her nose, but as her career began to grow in the 90s, she got a nose job, which left her looking completely different, made casting her that much harder because people simply didn't recognize her. Grey once said, I quote, "It was the nose job from hell. I'll always be this once famous actress nobody recognizes because of a nose job." Coming in at 5, Rob Lowe. As mentioned in our number 8 point, St. Elmo's Fire star Rob Lowe had a sex tape. That's right, it was the first video of a celebrity having sex to be copied and sold at large around the world. But to make things worse, the video was of him having sex with a 16-year-old girl, which resulted in his career taking a serious nosedive. According to reports, Lowe was in Atlanta at the 1988 Democratic Convention when he took home 2 girls after meeting them in a nightclub, unaware that one was just 16 years old. However, the actor escaped prosecution as the legal age of consent in Georgia is just 16. He took yet another blow though when a second clip was leaked showing him and a friend having sex with a woman at the same time. However, it didn't seem to negatively affect the actor too much as he went on to star in Wayne's World and Parks and Recreation. Lucky for some, I guess. Coming in at 4, Michael Richards. Seinfeld is considered to be one of the greatest television shows of all time. To most people, that is. Not me. I didn't like it. Michael Richards, of course, was one of the stars of the show. However, his long-running career was quickly met by a brick wall when he did a live show in 2006 that resulted in him engaging in a battle of wits with a member of the audience. In a split-second decision, he destroyed his entire career by responding to the man with a series of racial slurs, demanding that the African-American customer be thrown out. A video surfaced of the incident which showed Richards stop midway through his show and tell the audience member, I quote, 50 years ago they'd have you hanging upside down with a f***ing fork up your ass. The audience was of course just as shocked as we were, and the comedian left the stage without finishing his routine. Since then he has made a handful of small appearances, but he has been unable to land any major roles in the industry. Coming in at 3, Mark Salling. Glee's Noah Puckerman was a fan favorite among viewers back in the day, but that all came quickly crumbling away from the actor when he was arrested in LA in December 2015 for charges related to child pornography. According to investigators, they found a laptop, USB drive, and a hard drive filled with thousands of pictures and videos of child pornography, with the ages of children ranging from 5 years old to 12. The actor was set to star in the miniseries Adi Shankar's Gods and Secrets, but was very quickly dropped when news broke, with the producer saying in a statement, I quote, "The innocence of our planet's children is something that must be protected at all costs. Salling eventually agreed to a plea deal. However, before his sentencing, he hanged himself in a canyon near his LA home and was found dead on January 30th, 2018. Coming in at 2, Kevin Spacey. Oh, Kevin Spacey. Yet another person on our list that has become a Hollywood disgrace after reports of sexual misconduct and assault were brought against him. In October 2017, actor Anthony Rapp accused Spacey of making sexual advances towards him. Rapp was just 14 years old at the time. Once this surfaced, many other men came forward with similar stories, all of which accused Spacey of harassment and assault. In 2018, Spacey was charged with indecent assault and battery against an 18-year-old boy, and he was ultimately arrested. At the time, Kevin Spacey was starring in the film All the Money in the World. However, when these allegations came to light, his scenes were entirely reshot with the actor Christopher Plummer in his place. F you, Kevin Spacey. Oh, and on top of that, he used being gay as an excuse. You, Kevin Spacey. And finally in at number 1, Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was a legend back in the day, starring in the mega hit TV series The Cosby Show. However, the facade all came crashing down when several sexual assault allegations against the star became public, with the allegations spanning from the 1960s to the early 2000s. Although most of the cases fell outside of the statute of limitations, several lawsuits were filed against the actor, drawing the end of his prolific career. 25 colleges and universities rescinded Cosby's honorary degrees, and Walt Disney removed a statue of him from their Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame plaza. All episodes of The Cosby Show were pulled and clips were removed from TV Land's website. Even his talent agency ditched him, deservedly so. This guy is an utter and doesn't deserve any more attention than that. Coming in at number 10, Paul Reubens. Buckle in, folks, we're starting strong with this number. Reubens back in the 1980s was the bow-tied man-child we all came to love, Pee Wee Herman, character which he portrayed in 2 feature films as well as an Emmy-winning children's TV series. However, the facade crumbled when Reubens was arrested back in 1991 for indecent exposure at an adult movie theatre, with deputies claiming that they spotted him masturbating during the movie. Charming. Following his arrest, he pleaded no contest and was forced to take part in an anti-drug campaign to avoid a trial on the misdemeanor charge. All Pee-wee merchandise and movies were pulled from shelves, and Reubens was deemed a public disgrace, retreating from the public eye entirely. Later on, he attempted a comeback which epically failed, as more charges were brought against him, this time relating to child pornography, with officers seizing thousands of items from a collection of vintage gay erotica. While Reubens denied the claims, his reputation went up in flames. Coming in at 9, Jennifer Grey. Jennifer Grey was a household name in the 80s, quickly earning her the title of 80s darling following her performances in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Dirty Dancing. However, we no longer hear about Jennifer Grey, the actress that was predicted to rise to fame like her co-stars Matthew Broderick and Patrick Swayze. So what exactly happened? Well, one potential reason is because Grey has become completely unrecognizable since the days of her playing Bueller's sister. Back in the 80s, Grey was known for her nose. It was somewhat of a hot commodity, her trademark if you will. Well, her career quickly grinded to a halt in the early 90s when Grey got a nose job, opting for a smaller look to her original one. Grey once even stated, "It was the nose job from hell. I'll always be this once famous actress nobody recognizes because of a nose job." Yikes. In at 8, Michael Richards. Back in the day, Michael Richards was one of the kings of comedy, starring in the hit show Seinfeld for countless seasons. However, he wasn't just confined to that role. He also performed a lot of stand-up, which nobody predicted to draw the end of his long-running career. In 2006, Richards was performing when he began to engage in a standoff with a heckler in the audience, and in a split-second decision, he ruined his entire career by responding to the man with a series of racial slurs, even demanding the man be thrown out of the club. Even worse, the entire incident was recorded, clearly showing Richards telling the man, I quote, "50 years ago they'd have you hanging upside down with a fork up your ass." As you would expect, the audience were in shock as Richards repeatedly used the N-word. Richards then quickly left the stage without finishing his routine. Richards later went onto The Late Show to apologize for his outburst, stating that he was deeply sorry for what happened, and that he wasn't actually a racist. However, it didn't seem to do him any good because since then he has only had small cameo appearances on TV shows. Serves him right. In at 7, Lindsay Lohan. Of course, who could forget Lohan's fall from grace following her huge hit Mean Girls, released back in 2004, as well as Freaky Friday and Herbie Fully Loaded. It seemed as though all the cards were in her favor until Lohan was taken to hospital on May 26, 2007 after getting into a car accident. She had only just been discharged from the Wonderland Center rehab facility for undisclosed problems before Lohan was facing charges for a DUI, possession of cocaine, and a misdemeanor hit and run following the accident. Now, if this didn't cement her downward spiral, she was arrested on the exact same charges just 2 months later. And yet again, only days after exiting rehab. Now, you might think that's the end of it, but oh no. Lohan continued acting for a short while, even starring in I Know Who Killed Me, where she played opposite herself in the 2 main roles, earning her the Worst Screen Couple Award at the 2008 Golden Raspberries, as well as the Worst Actress. You won't find Lohan in any films now, however she is the executive producer of her own reality show called Lindsay Lohan's Beach Club, which airs on MTV. You should check it out. In at 6, Rob Lowe. Now connecting to our number 10 point, one of the items confiscated from Paul Rubin's pornography stash was the infamous Rob Lowe sex tape, which is exactly why Lowe is making an appearance on our list. Lowe was a member of the Brat Pack back in the 80s, starring in St. Elmo's Fire and Youngbloods. However, his charming boy-next-door facade crumbled when a video of him having sex with a 16-year-old girl was leaked, resulting in his career to come crashing down. The incident occurred in Atlanta in 1988 while Lowe was attending a Democratic National Convention, during which time he took 2 girls to bed after meeting them at a nightclub, unaware that one was only 16. However, in Georgia, the legal age of consent is 16, so Lowe escaped prosecution. The controversy continued though when a second clip was leaked showing him and a friend having sex with a woman at the same time. Now his career has somewhat been salvaged. The actor does claim that he lost out on the role of Jack though in Titanic because of the fallout. In at 5, Charlie Sheen. Sheen was at one time the highest paid actor in Hollywood. However, with such power comes a lot of pressure, with the actor turning to drugs and stupidity, destroying his own career in seconds. His demise came when he was first fired from TV shows for reasons related to drug addictions and anti-Semitic comments. He took his stupidity to a whole new level though when he began to verbally attack Chuck Lorre, the man who gave Sheen his career. Not only that, but Sheen went on to tell the media that he was a warlock and that he had tiger blood. He then began to upload videos to the internet of him smoking weed and cursing his employers, also stating that he was a rock star from Mars. Following on from his meltdown, he revealed that he had HIV and, knowing this fact, had sexual relations with around 200 partners. In at 4, Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson seems to have had a slew of scandals over his long career. Shockingly though, it wasn't his DUI arrest that made Hollywood want to turn their back on the Braveheart star. It was actually the conversation he had with the police officer while in the back of the car. After refusing arrest and attempting to flee the scene, Gibson was eventually cuffed and detained. Oh boy, I bet he regrets the things he said following this. While in the back of the car, he repeatedly threatened the police officer, stating that he owned Malibu and would spend every cent he had on getting even. According to the transcript obtained by the LA Times, Gibson blurted out, I quote, a barrage of anti-Semitic remarks about Jews, yelling, I quote again, the Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. Are you a Jew? Oh boy. However, Gibson is refusing to face the act and continues to make movies, usually ones he's directed, including the likes of Hacksaw Ridge, which was received well by critics, even getting a 10-minute standing ovation at the Venice Film Festival, as well as earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Director. Coming in at number 3, Judy Garland. Now, I should state right off the bat that Garland had a truly difficult life, particularly during her younger years during the making of The Wizard of Oz. Garland coped for more than 40 years, however in the 1940s her iconic performances and stellar portrayals transformed into temper tantrums, resulting in her getting fired from shows for a handful of reasons, including being a no-show. She eventually wound up bankrupt after years of drug abuse, alcoholism, and failed marriages. Just after her 47th birthday, Garland died from an accidental overdose of prescribed medicines. However, as I said before, Garland was doomed to fail before she even started, being prescribed a number of different medications when she was just 15 years old on the set of Wizard of Oz. Not only that, but the treatment she faced on that set was truly abysmal, including having to fend off attempts of sexual assault by various munchkins who were apparently drunk most days while on set. Coming in at number 2, Amanda Bynes. During her young years, Amanda Bynes was a rising star, even headlining her own series, The Amanda Show, and starring in films like She's the Man and Easy A. However, like many child stars before her, Bynes ran afoul with drugs and alcohol, but what really cemented her fall from grace was her Twitter meltdown following her arrest. The meltdown occurred in 2012, with tweets such as claiming she wanted Drake to murder her vagina, as well as tweeting Rihanna taunting that, I quote, Chris Brown beat you because you're not pretty enough. She went on to call Miley Cyrus and Jay-Z ugly and berated herself for the same thing, but off of Twitter she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and placed twice in a psychiatric facility following an incident where she set her neighbor's driveway on fire. However, years later, Bynes had seemingly reformed, heading towards a career in the fashion industry and stating that she no longer had any interest in acting. However, that all went out the window in 2017 when she stated that she was ready to come back. And lastly, coming in at number 1, Mark Salling. Salling shot to fame when he landed the role of Noah Puckerman on the hit TV show Glee, quickly making him a favourite amongst the musical-loving fans. However, this all fell apart in 2015 when Salling was arrested on charges relating to child pornography. According to an official statement from investigators, they found a laptop, USB drive and a hard drive filled with thousands of pictures and videos of child porn, and the ages of the children are believed to range from 5 to 12 years old. That's absolutely disgusting. Salling was instantly dropped from the miniseries Adi Shankar's Gods and Secrets, as the show said in a statement, I quote, "The innocence of our planet's children is something that must be protected at all costs." Salling agreed to a plea deal with prosecutors, however on January 30th, 2018, Salling hanged himself in a canyon near Los Angeles.
As we like to do with these videos, to really understand how someone got to where they are today, we must first begin at the beginning. She was born Jenna Marie Ortega on September 27th, 2002 in Coachella Valley, California. From a young age, Jenna has been in the spotlight and only spent a few years in grade school before getting her first critically acclaimed performance as a younger version of the titular Jane in the series Jane the Virgin from 2014. But like many young actors, Ortega got her first regular series gig on the Disney Channel. She got it on the show called Stuck in the Middle, where she portrayed Harley Diaz, the middle child of 6 siblings. It was one of those shows where the main character would break the fourth wall and address the audience to share their childlike wisdom with the viewers around the world. Now, while the show wasn't the most popular in the world, she herself won an Imagine Award for Best Young Actor in Television for her performance in 2018. Being a child star meant that she didn't have a normal educational experience, often regretting never actually attending a normal high school or experiencing the traditions that come with it. Filming a scene set at a prom versus going to an actual prom are two very different things. Despite this, Ortega has been able to power through and has maintained a steady stream of work ever since her Disney days, on both the small and big screen. In recent years, she stepped into the horror genre, and many fans have accepted her with open claws. Her most memorable role was in the slasher flick X, in which a group of actors making a movie that is not safe for work in rural Texas are caught by the owner of what they assumed was an abandoned farm, and the crew begin a fight for their lives. She was also recently responsible for reviving the much-loved Scream franchise in 2020 and its sequel in 2023. With roles like this and a passion to perform, it only makes sense that Jenna should be given a show. 8 episodes to showcase her talent in a dark and creative space. Enter Wednesday. The character of Wednesday Addams first creeped into existence in 1946 thanks to the wild and wacky mind of one Charles Addams. That's right, Tim Burton didn't create the concept for the show, and if you didn't know that, wait till you Google who made The Nightmare Before Christmas. The Addams Family first started as a series of cartoons published in The New Yorker, which is a famous news outlet, in the 1940s. The cartoons followed the adventures of a creepy family who find themselves in wacky and fun situations. For 20 years, Charles brought that family's dark and twisted sense of humor to the readers at home, and he garnered quite the fan base because of it. In 1964, a multicam sitcom was produced to bring the Addams Family to life and right to your family at home. In the first iterations of the cartoon, the family had no names or specific character traits per se, so the show gave writers a chance to develop new characters based on an existing property. The show premiered on September 18th in 1964, and the rest is history. The world was introduced to Mother Morticia Addams, Father Gomez Addams, son Pugsley Addams, Grandma Addams, who never actually has a name, and the family's 7-foot-tall butler Lurch, and of course, the devious daughter herself, Wednesday Addams. The show was hailed for its family dynamic and weird but fun style of humor that it presented to viewers. It ran for 64 episodes for just over 2 years, which was a pretty big deal in the 1960s. Eventually, the series was rebooted into 2 live live-action films from the late 1990s that many people watching this video may remember best, because they were fantastic. And if you haven't seen those movies, pause this video right now and go find them. Mamushka! Mamushka! Since then though, the property has changed hands a few times, with some rough live-action reboots of both the movie and the show in the early 2000s, as well as an animated film reboot of the franchise in 2019, which, yeah, let's just not get into that one. But the Netflix masterminds finally found a golden nugget when they not only bought the rights to the Addams Family, but they hired the king of the comedically macabre, Tim Burton himself, to produce and direct. Tim is famous for movies like Beetlejuice, Corpse Brides, Mars Attacks. Okay, he's not famous for that last one, but he really should be because it's freaking wild. Tom Jones fights an alien in Las Vegas. Just saying, if that doesn't make you want to watch that, I don't know what will. Burton was beyond excited to take the job and found his Wednesday in Jenna Ortega. Jenna was Tim's first choice from the get-go to play Wednesday after seeing her stint in the horror genre, as well as her comedic abilities from her Disney days. Jenna accepted the position and has portrayed the character for only one season of the show so far, but oh boy was it a good one. Literally, the series focused on the titular character as she moves to a new school filled with misfits and monsters, and as it turns out, mystery! Oh yeah, and in the show, Wednesday gets like psychic visions or something like that sometimes. It's kind of like That's So Raven, only Wednesday like collapses to the ground and Raven just kind of stares at you. Regardless, the show was the perfect mix between mystery thriller and dark comedy, and it had wonderful mystery elements. They were so well done that myself and the people watching the show with me enjoyed all 8 episodes in succession at midnight. It was a bad idea, but so worth it. The show premiered #1 on Netflix, not just in Canada, but in the entire world. It stayed at that #1 spot for 5 weeks, and in that time smashed Netflix viewership records and became the second most watched show on the platform, just barely pulling up behind Stranger Things. The show was renewed for a second season only 2 weeks after the final episode was released. That season may take some time to get off the ground, however, due to the current writer's strike taking place in the States, as well as some choice comments made by the actor in reference to her Wednesday screenwriters. Throughout production on Wednesday, Ortega had reportedly been uncomfortable filming some of the scenes that were written for her character and would regularly change the parameters of the script. One of the most glaring flaws in the Wednesday series, I think we can all agree, is its decision to focus on a love triangle between Ortega, a boy at her school who is a misfit, and a normie boy in the town nearby who, spoiler alert, is also a misfit. He's some kind of like Jekyll Hyde weird monster thing. It heavily distracted from the point of the show and tried to make us care about something that the character of Wednesday wouldn't even care about herself. This is why Ortega made several comments to the writing team and was quoted as saying that she would punch up the script more often than she expected to. She cut several lines that made no sense for the character and altered the overall love triangle storyline to help focus more on Wednesday and her friends. Jenna fought the writers back and forth on the issue, but she won that battle as it was discovered by the team working for season 2 that the show would drop that concept entirely. No more love triangles. We're gonna focus more on Wednesday's Nancy Drew-like escapades with some Addams Family flair mixed in. Unfortunately, even the smallest comment can be used to fuel the flames of anger, as several signs among the Writers Guild picket line are covered in quotes from Ortega and slogans, including one that says, "Without writers, Jenna Ortega will have nothing to punch up." While a large portion of writers find her comments and input to have been a negative move in their eyes, many writers have also gone the opposite route and have claimed Jenna as one of their own, claiming that punch-ups are still writing too, with one person even tweeting Jenna Ortega better get back from New York for her afternoon shift on the picket line. The writers' strike is entering its second week of protesting after beginning on May 1st. The last time a major writers' strike took place like this was in 2007, and that protest went on for 100 days, costing the film industry nearly $2 billion. With fury and frustration surely looming on the streets, Jenna's comments, while more than likely playful, have been used to get a point across to the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Production. The main focus point of the strike is the residuals and streaming of media. The AMPTP, they really need to work on that acronym. Share of the residuals from streaming platforms like Amazon and Netflix has cut much of the writer's average income compared to a decade ago. They also ask that artificial intelligence platforms like ChatGPT should only be used as a research tool to help facilitate new script ideas and not as a replacement for them entirely. The demands are very understandable, as you can't replace the art that a human being can produce with AI garbage that's just mashed together for you to pick apart and edit. Unfortunately, having Jenna's name on this sign means that her name is now being used in a negative way, and she could be caught up in a strike that she didn't even start. With the strike comes a massive pause in filming, leaving not not just the writers out of work, but the actors and crew as well. Was Wednesday's first season going to be its last, and will the dragging of Jenna's comments through the media mud be enough to officially ruin her career?